Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social podcast. Today the first ever World Cup took place in Benidorm. The World Cup finally returned to Spain 11 years after Igorre. There was finally a successor for Kevin Pauwels, and on the men's side that was Mathieu van der Poel after what was truly an amazing race. With me here to discuss that, coming from the ground in Benidorm, is Issam.
Indeed, thank you for having me.
Hopefully you will be able to provide us with some details on the racing. I will start with a brief summary on the men's race. Mathieu van der Poel had the fastest start, but as the course was lightning fast, he struggled to create a decisive gap. He had one advantage, and that was that he was able to ride the sandpit almost every lap, whilst the others were struggling. Pidcock, he was racing his last race of the season, and in the beginning of the race he looked alive. He was leading and put the pressure on the rest, and that eventually led to a leading group of 6 riders. We had, besides the so-called big three of Van der Poel, Van Aert and Pidcock, Eli Iserbyt, Laurens Sweeck and Kevin Kuhn. However, it quickly became clear that Pidcock went a bit too deep in all of those efforts, as he was dropped when Van Aert attacked for the first time. It was pretty clear that Van Aert and Van der Poel were the strongest, but as it was a pretty fast course with some draft effect kicking in, they looked at each other multiple times, leading to the others coming back. Eventually though, in the final lap, we saw a great battle between Van Aert and Van der Poel. Van der Poel knew that he needed to be in front in the sand because that's where he was able to open a gap, so he launched a very late dive bomb in the off-camber uphill corner just before the sandpit. He forced Van Aert wide and succeeded in taking the lead. However, Van Aert also managed to ride through the sand very well in the final lap, and that meant that Van der Poel could not create a gap. Van Aert then took over the lead on the road section and tried to put the rest under pressure, and mainly Van der Poel, but Van der Poel did not give in. He then, in the technical downhill, launched a very late move down the inside of Van Aert and managed to take the lead on a very crucial moment. A small slip just before the second pit zone still saw Van Aert almost pull alongside Van der Poel, but Van der Poel stayed calm and jumped over the barriers first. That was his goal. He wanted to create a small gap there, but he didn't succeed in creating a gap. But what he did have was the lead, and that proved to be crucial because he from there on just went full sprint over the grass section and onto the tarmac. Van Aert was in the wheel, but he ultimately wasn't able to pull alongside. Going through the final corner, he was on the outside of Van der Poel, and the road simply ended there for him. He almost went into the barriers. Luckily, he didn't crash, which means that Van der Poel took the win, his 5th win of the season, ahead of Van Aert, with the 3rd place eventually going to Eli Iserbyt. A great race, Issam. The fast course without really any super decisive features saw a close battle with other riders able to stay close. What was your thought on that battle between Van Aert and Van der Poel? Was it really Van Aert who gave it away by allowing Van der Poel to make these audacious moves down the inside and that he should have positioned himself better? Or was it more the class of Van der Poel that he was able to make these moves?
Well, I think that maybe Van Aert was a little bit surprised that Van der Poel made that move there, and in the end that was the decisive move. But I think Van der Poel, if he didn't do it in that corner, he would have probably tried it somewhere a little bit later on the course. And I think that overall, while they are actually very close to each other, they're quite different riders. I think Van der Poel is definitely somebody that has a higher risk factor, but also make some moves where you think, what's going on? And Van Aert is somebody that's a bit more calculated, is probably technically a little bit less compared to Van der Poel. But yeah, I think that today it was very difficult to open a gap. You could really put somebody under pressure, but it was just, it was fast, but it was also in a way that you could not really get rid of somebody if he doesn't make a mistake. If he would have made a mistake, both Van der Poel or Van Aert, and the other one was ahead, then it was almost game over, because then you have guys that were in your wheel that are going to be overtaking you, or but if you're in somebody's wheel, it's easy to follow. But if there is a gap of 3, 4, 5 seconds, even with 3, 4, 5 seconds, if it's only for a short time, you can still maybe bridge it. But if it's longer, then it's very difficult to bridge it. And that was very visible today. And I think that Van der Poel and Van Aert were the strongest. And Van der Poel, just made the right move. And from there on, didn't make, I wouldn't say any mistakes, because mistakes were made. But he was able then to continue and finish it off.
Yeah, I would say that it was the class of Van der Poel to make those moves. And that Van Aert isn't really to blame, because that dive bomb just before the sandpit was super late. And Van Aert did really well to react, because he was initially already turning in and then saw Van der Poel coming and was, whoa, I'm not going to collide here. I'm going to take the wider line. And it almost succeeded for him. That second move also, Van der Poel to place it there in the more loose dirt, it's a super risky move. And Van Aert, you're not going to close that door there, because it's going to carry a lot of risk. So I don't think Van Aert is really to blame. The only mistake he made was, I think, to place him at the outside of Van der Poel to try and come around him. He should have done what Thibaut Nys did in the under-23 race. If he had stayed in the wheel or tried to cut back the corner, then he might have had a chance to pull along. But I think that realistically, that start-finish straight was so short that it wouldn't have mattered all too much. The sprint before the sprint decided it. It was a nice battle. They treated us to an amazing battle, and as you say, the draft effect played a role. That is why it was relatively important to stay in the wheels, and if you were a couple of seconds down, you could come back when the pace dropped. It was almost like a urban mountain bike race like we have them in the Netherlands, and I think, to be honest, that I don't mind a course like this. Like, one of them is fine. It's a great misunderstanding that cross needs to be on grass or in mud. It can be on all surfaces, and this is a bit atypical. It's not a cross you see every day, but I've watched some of these Spanish races, especially the ones in the Alicante region, which is where we were today. Those had more surfaces like this, relatively fast races, grass or some sand paths. Yeah, it's fine for me, and I don't know how it was for you watching there, but it reminded me a bit of a combination between a modern cross and an old cross. An early 2000 cross like Pijnacker or Sint-Michels-Gestel, they didn't have all too much elevation or man-made hills. They also didn't have too much corners, and that made for fast racing. Today was without a doubt the fastest race of the season, average speeds of 27.5 kilometers per hour. That is rapid fast. So, yeah, I don't mind it. It's something different. Not every cross needs to be the same, but I do think that there might have been a bit too much tarmac.
I agree with that. I think that in terms of tarmac, there was maybe a little too much, but I think that the combination, the tarmac then with the gravel, and sometimes it was tricky in some of the corners, it made it difficult. It was not only sort of a road race, a crit that we were watching. It was, you actually had to have some skills to get through the corners, and I think that part made it the race it was today, a little bit more interesting than, if in case of, for example, if you would have had a race today that was probably a little bit less technical, then it would have been a race where you would, it would bore you out in a way, and you would say that this is something that has nothing to do with cyclocross. But I think, like you said, the philosophy is a little bit like those races in that era, and today it showed us that in other countries you could do a race that is maybe a little bit atypical, but there is a whole purpose behind this race. Because when I was there, the atmosphere was crazy. There are a lot of people that are involved, mainly, I think, personally, guys that follow the road a little bit more, but they were fans of everybody. It was not only when, with Van der Poel, Van Aert and Pidcock. Of course, it was obviously a little bit more the reactions, but I think overall the whole day it was quite busy from the start. The people were coming in, and it was, I think everybody enjoyed their time, and I think that today proved this concept to be worthy of trying, or at least seeing if it's possible maybe to do, I wouldn't say with all the races, but to have maybe a country that has maybe this amount of people that actually are interested in cyclocross, and see how you can work. But I think today it proved that the concept works, and there are things that they could change, but overall it's quite good.
Yeah, it was a hole-in-one because between 15 and 17,000 spectators is a lot, and it's really special that they get that. And in a way, it's a bit of a trade-off because on one hand, you want to be an urban cross, because if you're in an urban area, you're going to be able to attract people easy. It's close to them, they live close, they can come, they can walk, or here in Benidorm, people can drive from from Valencia or Alicante. It's not too far from them. So you attract more people, but the downside is that you are relatively limited in terms of courses. I think they try to maximize it here. It's not perfect. There can be some improvements, but it's only the first time they organize it here. And I'm not going to say that the Cyclocross World Cup is perfect. I think there are many things that can be improved. Some small things, some big things. But I will give it to Flanders Classics that for the second year in a row, they have added a new event on the calendar. And it's one, adding diversity. Last year we had Val di Sol, that was a snow cross. Now we have a fast urban cross. Riders are positive because they can combine it with their training camps. But most important, after last year setting up a new sponsorship model, Val di Sol is completely carried by sponsor income. I mean, there are some ticket sales, but they are not significant for their budget. Now they have actually exported the Flemish idea of cross. You organize a cross, you attract more than 10,000 people, they pay 10 or in this case 15 euros for a ticket, and then they spend food on consumption there. Which means that spectators generate the revenue needed, that you don't rely on sponsors. You rely on a spectator-based funding model, and it worked here. And that's a great step. And I expect that we are coming back here to Benidorm next season, and then they can go work on another. They have helped set this up. Next year they can do more things by themselves, and they can focus on, hopefully, London. I have not received any real news on it, but I know they are still working on adding London, and hopefully they can set up London next year and help develop Dublin even further. And Val di Sol is becoming more independent, and like this you are at least creating some new races, and not ones that disappear the year after, like we've seen previously in the World Cup. So, no, I'm really positive about that. I think that's great, and in general, the course, it wasn't bad. I think the most fun part must have been the sand section.
Yeah, I think that the sand section was definitely very good, especially the things that led up to it and then to get out of it as well. But I think that the section in the woods was also quite good. It was, I think, tricky for the riders with the gravel surface, but I think that overall that was quite an epic place. On TV, probably you didn't see it that much, but you could definitely see that there was some dust, and I don't know. It created some interesting views for the spectators, and there were a lot of spectators actually in the wood as well. So, but overall, it was. I think the course had definitely some special places, some sections that were definitely good, and I think that overall it was a successful race. And it's up to Flanders Classic and the organization if they're able to continue, but it seems very promising.
Yeah, I would like to finish on that sand section and also conclude the bit on the battle between Van Aert and Van der Poel with at least my thought on why Van der Poel had the upper hand in the sand. He was running the PP Squalo tire thread, which is a more sand tire. Van Aert was running the Grifo tire thread as far as I'm aware, and that led to him being a bit more of a tractor in the sand and getting himself stuck in it. The sand looked super loose and super tough. I think they imported it directly from the beach, creating some issues. So I think in general, this sand pit was good. Like, it caused issues in the sense of it was tough for riders. But I think that is what led to Van der Poel being stronger through the sand than Van Aert. If we look at the entire top 10, Van der Poel took the win ahead of Van Aert, as I said. Iserbyt ended third, ahead of Zweek, who secured the overall World Cup, as Michael van Toerenhout was ill. Fifth place went to Pidcock. That was his last race of the season. Kevin Kuhn ended 6th ahead of Lars van der Haar, and the final places in the top 10 went to Niels van der Putte, Felipe Orts and Gerben Kuipers. I think we have to mention the ride of Eli Iserbyt, a 3rd place. It's a strong result by him, but I'm also not too surprised by it. Full credit to you, Issam, to predict the entire podium, but let's be honest, this is a good course for Iserbyt. I would favour him here, especially seeing his form has been improving again. It's almost like an October cross where he usually does well.
Yeah, and the weather was also a bit like October. It was today, I think it was like 12, 13 degrees, a small cold breeze of wind, but it was nice weather. The sun was shining, and yeah, Iserbyt maybe got those October vibes for today. But I think that overall you could see that there were some improvements, and he had some difficult moments in this season, but it's going a little bit upwards. Maybe he was hyped up a little bit too much in the Belgium Championships, but then yet again he didn't have a full fair race in that aspect with the crash. And I think that today it was a course that suits him well, because there are a lot of those like very slow turns with the gravel. It's very difficult to really place your weight well, and I think that he did it perfectly. The maximum achievable for him was probably today 3rd. He, in his enthusiasm and very good form, he almost lost that by trying to follow Van der Poel and Van Aert, and that almost braked him up, but he could recover quickly in time for the last lap, and then had enough to hold off Sveik for that 3rd spot.
Yeah, I mean, Iserbyt, strong result, but Sveik behind him, it's a solid performance by him. It's not the perfect course for him, so 4th is more than good enough, and he needed to end top 9 to win the overall. And I think he basically had it locked in already, but now it's just a confirmation with 1 to go. He is the winner. Pidcock in 5th. Some more news on him. He had some injuries after the crash in Baal. He had some damage to one of his nerves. He missed 1 week of training, but still came here to race Benidorm. I think it was just that he had an agreement with Flanders Classics to do it, and he honored that agreement. Kuhn in 6th looked to be eager to prove that there was an incident last week that he lost the national title to Ruek. Ruek was in the top 10 at some point, but eventually ended 15th. Lars van der Haar, tad disappointing, especially on this course, but he was sick in the week before the nationals, went deep there, and that is why it's important to place a bit of a side note here. There's many riders going on training camp here. Usually they wouldn't race now. Now that it's closed, they do race. They do this instead of an intensive training. So it's important to note that different riders are on different fitness levels here. Some riders are tired from a week of training, others aren't. For instance, Van Aert did 140 kilometers of training the day before the race, whilst a rider like Iserbyt was practicing the course. Van der Poel also went for a long road ride the day before the race. They clearly didn't really prepare for this race, whilst others did. I think for the rest in the top 10, no real surprises, except another strong result by Gerben Kuipers, which leaves us that we have to mention him. Felipe Orts, 9th in his home World Cup. He was cheered on by a lot of Spanish fans, as you said, an electric atmosphere, and the 9th place is then a very nice result for him. It was basically his home race, because not only was it in Spain, it was like, 50 kilometers something from his hometown?
Yeah, roughly. It was, it's for him, it's somewhere that he comes to quite a lot. And when the organizers kind of had their plans to create this race, he was involved not in a way that he was he knew how the course would be, but he was involved in the sense that he really wanted to know what was going on. And for him, this race is special, and you could see it how he took it on. He gave a lot of time to his fans. He gave an interview just before the I think it was it was during the men's under 23 race. Gave an interview on the Reckon Day on Saturday, the official Reckon from the course, and I think that overall he was enjoying his time. But it adds also a little bit of pressure and maybe some energy that goes to things that you normally wouldn't spend on. And, it's for him, he had to enjoy it, and I think he did. He really enjoyed it. He tried to take it in, and I think overall for him, the results, the ninth place is something that he wouldn't be bothered with. I think he's already very happy that the race happened and that he was able to at least, have a good race. I think that the results overall is not that important, but I think him as a rider in cyclocross is important for cyclocross in Spain, and he knows that role, and he's trying to be the foundation of cyclocross in Spain, and it works out well for him at the moment, and the fans love him.
Let's go and talk about the women's race then, and it was unsurprisingly Marie Schreiber who had the fastest start. The brand new national champion of Luxembourg was eager to show her kit, but unfortunately for her it didn't last all too long before Fem van Empel took over. We had a relatively big leading group in the first lap, but eventually we got to a situation with 4 leaders. Fem van Empel, Puk Pieterse, Sherin van Anrooy and Silvia Persico. Between these riders there were a couple of attacks, and it looked to be that Fem van Empel and Puk Pieterse were slightly stronger than the other two. Van Anrooy and Persico got dropped multiple times but managed to come back multiple times as well. Even in the final lap they were still together, but on what truly was one of the most insane road attacks I have seen in cross, well, especially women's cross ever, Fem van Empel attacked in the final lap on the uphill stretch. She basically made the legs of Persico go poof, then the legs of Van Anrooy went poof, they just got dropped straight from the wheel whilst Van Empel was sitting. Pieterse was hanging on for dear life and she managed to make it to the top of the climb, and that really wasn't everything for her. She managed to take the lead even. Van Empel was surprised, but Pieterse made a mistake. She was distracted by a lap rider and overshot the corner into the technical downhill. Van Empel took the lead, but Pieterse, who knew she had to try and force something on the barriers, managed to regain the lead after the steep banking just before they went into the park section again. An impressive move by Pieterse, who fought hard to take the lead towards the barriers, but ultimately also overshot the corner going to the barriers. That meant that Fem van Empel went over the barriers first. Pieterse tried to pull alongside but couldn't do so. From there on, they were basically in a similar scenario as Van Aert and Van der Poel. Pieterse couldn't get by, and once they went onto the tarmac, she knew it, Fem van Empel was going to take the win. Van Empel took the win ahead of Puk Pieterse. Behind that, Van Anrooy managed to take third, so Persico needed to settle for fourth. Some mistakes there in the final lap by Pieterse Issam. Is that your main takeaway, or are you still a bit blown away by that fabulous road attack by Fem van Empel?
Both. I think that the racing was definitely good, but that attack was insane from Van Empel, to be honest, sitting in the saddle. You've mentioned it a couple of times that is a weapon from Van Empel, but yet again it was demonstrated, and it was an ugly attack. It was very sharp, and both Persico and Van Anrooy had all the difficulties in the world to follow and eventually had to drop, and Pieterse today was very strong. I think on a course like this, Pieterse normally I wouldn't say should have struggled, but I think that Van Empel would have won it a little bit easier. And I think today Pieterse actually gave it a fair shot, made it a tough win for Van Empel, but in the end Van Empel was the winner. I mean, Pieterse made some mistakes in the last lap that eventually led to Van Empel, being ahead. But I think that overall Van Empel was probably, on a course like this, in the last lap, it's always difficult to beat Van Empel, and there is no shame in being second for Pieterse. And I think that in the end, the race played out as you kind of predicted it, and not the way I predicted it with all the positions being wrong on the podium. So I think that overall, the people definitely enjoyed this race today.
I guess you win some, you lose some. You with the men's prediction, and I got some of the women's predictions right for once. But that attack by Van Empel on the road, it should be illegal to attack like that. I mean, come on, just seated? Are you serious? Seated? I thought I was watching Fabian Cancellara drop Tom Bonen in the Tour of Flanders. Like, what was going on? Sure, Persico and Van Androoy went deep to come back, but Van Empel takes over the lead seated. And she ups her cadence and shifts 3 gears bigger. And you can just see, like, I watched it back a couple of times, and first Persico, that face, and it's like, poof, finished. Van Androoy, who we know is a good road rider, is out of the saddle, hanging on for her life, and poof, legs go. And then Pieterse, whilst Van Empel is apparently just chilling, it doesn't even look like it cost her any effort. Like, how? Pieterse is out of the saddle, and she looked just like Van der Poel did when Van der Poel won Strade Bianche in 2021, also in a Dutch champion kit, which is the exact same one Pieterse is wearing now. And she's hanging on, that face, that grinta. And then, the most disgusting part is when they come to that roundabout, Van Empel still has the energy to get out of the saddle. That was something else. If this is anything to lead up to the road season, I think we're going to see a lot from Fem Van Empel this road season, because the way that she is able to put out the power seated, it's phenomenal. That seated acceleration, we've said it a couple of times, is just out of this world, and it showed today, and it's very special that Pieterse managed to hang on. So far for my praising of Fem Van Empel, because Puk Pieterse, despite those 2 mistakes, deserves some praising as well. I thought she was super eager today. Getting the elbows out, getting the shoulders out. She matured in the season. She now has learned that you don't always need to be nice. It's not bad to get your elbows out. It's not bad to get your shoulders out. It's not bad to squeeze someone. It's part of the sport. And she's really understanding the game now. And that if you want to beat Fem Van Empel, especially on a course like this, you might need to get some not so nice tricks out of your back. And she pulled them today. I think it's unfortunate that she was distracted by the back marker, which caused her to overshoot the corner before the downhill. I think that would be a different scenario, because who knows what she could have done there. And then the corner before the barriers, that was just a bit of a mistake. But again, the corner before the second pit zone, another lapped rider getting involved, causing Puk Pieterse to also miss that corner. Again, 80% rule not doing its work, but we've ranted enough about that in the Christmas period. So back to Puk Pieterse. Great mindset, and if she's able to race like that and the course suits her a bit better, that's a plus point she has, because I haven't seen Fem Van Empel do that yet.
I mean, we have seen some sparks of Van Empel showing that she is able to ride like that, or at least have this way of having the elbows a little bit out and be a bit more, I wouldn't say aggressive, but just stay your ground and try to maintain your position or improve it. I think that for Brandt, for example, is definitely someone that is very good at that definitely knows how to use the elbows, definitely knows how to put herself in a position that she will, force you wide, and she will take that position from you and stuff. And those tricks, they're legal. That's cyclocross, and that's how you have to play it. And like you said, I think today Pieterse was definitely, maybe in Spain with the Grinta, but overall in this season is, she has been going quite well, and she definitely made a step, matured maybe is a very good word, the progression that she has made over this season. And like I said, on a course like this, giving such a hard battle to Van Empel, I think it's promising for the next coming weeks and the World Championships. But I think overall for the next, it's very hard to speculate for the next coming years, but it's, it looks very promising.
Then on the riders slightly behind Van Empel and Pieterse, for Persico in fourth, I can be short. She needs some lessons in tactics. Sitting in fourth wheel in such a race is not smart, to say the least, because despite there not being that many corners, there were certainly enough corners to cause her to need to accelerate more and waste more energy. And about Van Androoy, I've been doing some research towards the training efforts that they have done. We know that Van Androoy skipped the nationals to do training here. I said this in the men's part as well. It's a question. Who is where on their form level or their peak level, their training schedule towards Worlds? For Van Androoy, it's clear. She's been training here with the Trek Road team. Everyone from Trek was here. They're mountain bikers as well. Madigan Munro was here. Evie Richards was here. And what we saw was that Van Anrooy has done by far the most training out of the big three of the women's side. I don't have any data for Persico, unfortunately, but Van Anrooy has done multiple 5-hour rides. She was here for over a week, many 4-hour rides. When I look at the data of Fem van Empel, who was with Jumbo, they did completely a different program than what Trek did. She did one 4-hour ride, and I think a test. They had a test day, and then 2 relatively short rides and the rest day in. That's very different to Van Anrooy, has been loading herself with endurance. Pieterse, she did just one 4-hour ride. I think Van Empel actually did 2. And then Pieterse did 2 3-hour rides, and that basically seemed to be it. Needed to recover after nationals, of course. So it's fair to say that Van Anrooy wasn't the freshest here, and I think it showed. I also think the course didn't really suit her, but that training will definitely have an effect, and I think the program towards peaking towards Worlds is looking relatively good. Of course, it's always a bit careful, like, do you perfectly time it? But I can definitely see the work that's being done and how that should function towards a good peak at Worlds. And that tiredness, I think we could see a similar effect on Lucinda Brandt. Her second and third lap were relatively tough. They were lap times of just under 7:50. For reference, Van Empel and Pieterse did 7:30, so that's 20 seconds per lap. But in the final phases of the race, she was able to push her lap times down and get into the 7:30s again. That's probably also a sign that Brandt felt some tiredness after not only a busy Christmas period, but also a big block of training here still towards Worlds. And overall, the race by Brandt was not bad because she still managed to overtake Vorst, who was basically in 5th for the entire race.
Yeah, indeed. I think that Brandt actually today was it was not bad. It was quite okay. I think that's for her, especially like you say, the training was probably very hard, and then obviously with the busy periods that was before, it's almost logical the way it went today. And like you said, it might be a sign of fatigue that in the first part you were able a little bit to go through it, and then it gets a bit tougher, and then you're actually able to get the laps up again. The body kind of gets kind of used to the effort that you're doing, and then it's a bit easier to go through it. And I think for Brandt, it's now, she has been in a constant pursuit of having a good form. Seems like it's coming right now, so I think for her it's just hoping that it will be in time for the Worlds, that she has maybe a shot of a podium, you don't know. But I think that's, for her it's a case of just trying to do her best, and the form will probably come by itself.
And it's a bit the question how she will bounce back from what is a tough season. I still can't really forget the races in the beginning of the season when she was fighting with Van Empel. I would have really loved to see what could have been. I am convinced that a complete fit season Lucinda Brandt would have been able to fight with the 3 we've seen now. That could have made it even more interesting. It was kind of what I predicted pre-season as well, that we would see a strong Van Empel, Pieterse and Van Anrooy, but that Brandt, and I expected a lot more from Vos, that they would be able to fight with them, but unfortunately it wasn't to be. And if we will see it at the World Championships, I don't know. It's hard to say. Let's look at the entire top 10, because we can speculate, but we can keep that for the preview podcast for Worlds. We went over the top 5 of Van Empel, Pieterse, Van Anrooy, Persico and Brandt. 6th place went to Vorst. Bit of an anonymous race on an island, got overtaken by Brandt in the final stages. Good 7th place by Zoe Backstedt, ahead of Lien Burquier, Magali Rochette and Hélène Clausel, the newly crowned French champion, in 10th. So I think we need to talk a bit about Backstedt and Burquier. Backstedt, it's a return to the levels that we saw in the beginning of the Christmas period, when she had really good results. 4th in Gavere, 4th in Mol. It's a good result, 7th, of course, maybe not perfect for her, but still not bad. and then Burquier in 8th. You have a lot more insights on her race than we do.
Well, a lot more, I don't know, but I don't know how the broadcast exactly went for the women's race and what there was seen from Burquier, but from what I saw, it was especially that long straight that is going up quite, I wouldn't say, yeah, quite steep actually. She was climbing very well, and on a course like this where you need the power, you can definitely say that this is definitely not a course that suits her well. You know, she can definitely get some of the technique going, but actually crashed. I think it was lap 2 probably where she crashed. That didn't help her, but in the end, I think that if you take that crash in consideration and the fact that she kept going, she can like really take the effort to another level. She can really suffer on a bike, and that's what you need to be a good cyclist and to be a good cyclocross rider. And I think today from her it was, you might not think that it is a special effort, but for me it looked very good and it looked very promising. And like I said, on a course especially like this where you cannot really find her ability, which is probably climbing, she, in my opinion, did a very good job.
I mean, there was some climbing involved, and I guess that did help her, but still, it's a rider who usually does well on a bit more extreme mountain bike courses with climbing and mud, and it's a good result. And I definitely think a road team should sign her, because despite being super talented in mountain biking, I do think there's a very good road climber in her. Seen her posture, seen that she basically weighs nothing and has very good watts. Yeah, I think that would definitely be a road signing, and she's made a lot of progression on the faster courses this year, whereas for Backstedt, I think we always knew that she could do it on fast courses, especially considering that she's not the most technical rider, but it still needed to come out this season, because in Maasmechelen and Beekse Bergen, probably the two fastest courses, or two of the fastest courses we've seen. We also had Fayetteville and Waterloo and Tabor, but you get the point. There, Backstedt wasn't even in the top 20, so it's good to see that progression continue. And we have to mention Magali Rochette in 9th, because that was a surprise, not only pre-race, but even during the race. I only saw her name pop by in the overview in the bottom, like around 15th, sometimes a bit higher, but there was a big peloton there, and I guess where Vos and Van der Heijden went backwards towards the end of the race, Rochette kept the steady pace up and claimed a World Cup top 10, which is a great result for her.
I definitely think so. I think she was riding quite well, and overall I think that you could definitely see that there was something behind it, and that's what you need on a course like this. So I think that in the end Rochette can be very satisfied with the result in the end.
I still have some names to mention outside of the top 10. I mean, first of all, hats off to Helene Clauzel. 10th is a good result for her. Outside of the top 10, I am disappointed by Marianne Vos, especially seeing the fact that she was going relatively well in the middle part of the race, running in 5th, running in 6th, but then ultimately it all faded for her and she blew up. It's definitely not what she hoped for and a bit of a surprise. And I think many riders that took initiative in the middle part of the race paid for it in the final part of the race. Bakker, Van der Heijden, Van Alphen all dropped back a bit, but I'm not complaining. It's nice to see a bit of a refreshing top 10 for once with only, well, still 50% of the flags are Dutch, but nice to see some other flags in there. And finally, a mention of Catablanca Vash. Not a great result for her. 19th, took a tumble in the Reckon in the course practice yesterday, so that might have influenced her. Whilst you were watching the training yesterday, Issam, I was watching an exact cross in Zonnebeke. The men's race was actually surprisingly entertaining, with a large group of riders fighting for the win, 7 riders throughout most of the race. Eventually, Tim Merlier managed to break away in the penultimate lap, I think, and he opened the gap over Ryan Kamp and David van der Poel. He took his first cyclocross win since 2013 or something. It was immediately his last cross race of the season. He's now preparing for the road. The women's race was won by Denise Betsma. That was super boring. She rode away in the early phases of the race, already in the first lap, won on pure class, deserved the win, had more than a minute on Mario Norbert Ribeiro in second, and Austin Killips ended third. I do wonder what happened with Betsema's plan to go on training camp in Spain. Maybe it got cancelled for whatever reason, or we don't know, but good to see her take her second win of the season regardless. Then back to Benidorm, Issam. I know we don't usually cover the youth races, but today we have to mention the story of Thibaut Nys. Fill us in on what happened in the under-23 race.
Well, in the under-23 race, it was mainly Tibor Del Grosso and Emil Verstrengen that looked very good. Michels as well. Nys was up there with them, but then had an issue, probably a puncture or something like that, when he was passing the camper just before the exit of the woods section. And then I think he was a bit distracted by the fact that there was something wrong with his bike, and he crashes in that chicane that they have put in just before the exit of the woods, and the knee a bit wounded. He had then another crash and a puncture. So in the end, everything was against him, but remontada, that's the word that you can use for the performance of Nys today. He came back to the front. In the end, also, Del Grosso turns into that corner. The last corner first is the one leading the sprint. And we have seen that if you come out of that corner first, it's almost impossible for the rider behind to make an attempt and get you before the line. And Nys was just able to demoralize Del Grosso in the sprint. After the race, Del Grosso said that he was going, and then he felt that Nys was coming so fast, and then it kind of just gets in the legs. And Nys today was really good, was actually very good. And despite everything, after the race, I've seen him as well, he looked fresh. There was not that it was really a very tough race for him. So I think that performance is truly, truly great. And it tells something about his level at the moment, that, for the men's under 23, in my opinion, looking at it now, that it's I don't know who's going to beat him there, because with all the bad luck that he had today, he was still able to get through and to eventually win the race. And that, on a course like this, that's very difficult, and he still managed to motivate himself, even if it's going a bit wrong, and he got himself to the victory.
Nah, Issam, these are dangerous statements you are making. I have learned it the hard way with saying that Denise Betsma could basically not lose the X2O trophy when you think it's certain. And look where I am. I'm in a position where Betsma is more than 2 minutes behind in that trophy. Yes, I agree. I agree. Nys is very good, but don't forget, when we went to the European Championships this year, we were all saying, Nys has been by far the best under-23 rider, maybe Ronhaar. But what happened? He had a puncture and lost so much time that he ended third. And it's a bit of a thing with Nys on championships, that things don't really go his way, almost like he has some of the genes of his young father. But still, I agree. He should be the favorite going in. But I'm just going to say, so many things can happen. After what happened with Betsma, I'm not making some of these statements like he can basically not lose anymore.
Yeah, I agree for sure. And obviously, the sport of cyclocross has a lot of surprises for us. But I just say what I think, and for me, it's going to be very difficult. Let's just put it that way. It's going to be very difficult to find an opponent for Nys. I think the main opponent for Nys is going to be himself and the bike. And other than that, I think that's, for me, you can bank in a lot of things on the fact that Nys is going to be the winner there in the men's under 23 category. I take the risks in this statement.
Well, we will see, because he is obviously in very good form, and it's pretty obvious that he's the favorite going into the World Championships. But we'll need to wait and see, because with Nys, you never know. Today was very good, but if his back doesn't hold anymore, then it can be completely the opposite in a couple of days' time. But I do hope for him that he takes the win there, because I think he would deserve it based on the season. He's been by far the most consistent and best under 23, won all 4 under 23 World Cups. He is even skipping the World Cup in Besançon next week because he wants an extra day of recovery towards Worlds and doesn't fancy the travel, which he can do because your worst result doesn't count in the youth category. So, based on that, I understand his choice. Bit unfortunate for Besançon. They are the final and still looking to be skipped by many athletes, but it is what it is. Issam, thank you for your insights from Spain. I hope you enjoyed your stay there for the World Cup.
Yes, thank you for having me. Yeah, it was perfect. The stay was great here, so I really enjoyed it. Enjoyed the atmosphere, and the racing was also very good, which helped. So, yeah, I'm very happy here, and tomorrow I go back to the Netherlands.
Yeah, back to the shit weather here. I hope, I said, that you enjoyed it. Glad to see that you most likely did. It also brings an end to our long campaign of the discount code of the Benidorm Cyclocross World Cup. So maybe you'll get some new ads on our next episodes and not the same old Benidorm Cyclocross Worlds. But no. Thanks everyone for listening, and we will be back with an episode ahead of the World Cup in Besançon this week, and then a double weekend before Worlds next weekend. So, see you guys. It's 2 more weeks until Worlds. Stay tuned. Goodbye.